Today on Join Us in France, the vitality of wine culture in the Burgundy region with guest tour guide Kelly Camborian. This is Join Us in France, episode 98. Hello, I'm Annie. And yes, it's me, broken voice and all. And Join Us in France is a show about all things French. And since in France we wish each other a happy new year all throughout the month of January, let me wish you a wonderful 2016 with health, love, and of course, a visit to France that you can plan with the help of Join Us in France. Kelly Camborian was on the show once before to tell us about her adoptive region, Burgundy. She is from New York originally, but has been a long-time resident of France and a long-time tour guide in France. You can listen to her first episode on joinusinfrance.com/57, and for today's photos and show notes, go to joinusinfrance.com/98. Join Us in France listeners, I'd love an iTunes reviews from you. Tell me how I'm doing. Just search for Join Us in France in the iTunes store and type away. It doesn't have to be very long, just from the heart. And also, I'm going to have to go for a looser recording schedule for the show. I have a lot more work than I know what to do with. So I may have to release on a different day of the week or produce shorter episodes some weeks. I'm not sure I'm going to cope with all the work, but I'll do my very best. There just aren't enough hours in the week. This week's extra, for those of you who subscribe to the mailing list, is a tip sheet on how to handle a visit to a winery in France and how to best enjoy your next wine tasting while in France. Most people drive right by signs that offer wine tastings and they never stop because they're not sure what's going to happen and what to say, etc. I'll show you on the tip sheet, and also the French tip of the week at the end of the episode will be all about that. So make sure you open your weekly emails because that's how you get the extras. You know, they say people who value experience over stuff have happier lives, and I have found that to be true in many ways. I think the best wine gift you can give your loved ones is a Burgundy tour where you can visit the Burgundy region and enjoy some Burgundy tasting on the site, as well as learn about all the various types of wine that they produce at the source and in one of the world's best and most famous wine producing regions. A great occasion to do that is to visit the Vincent Tournante wine festival that they hold every year at various locations in Burgundy the weekend following January 22nd, which is St. Vincent Day on the Catholic calendar. As part of that visit, I would definitely plan on going to Bonn as well, even if the festival is not centered there, because it's gorgeous and full of history. And who knows, you might meet one of the showy chevaliers du Tastevin there. If the show is helpful to you and you'd like to show us your support, make your Amazon purchases through Join Us in France. To do that, go to joinusinfrance.com and click on the picture on the left-hand side of the website. Right now, it's a picture of the Paris Metro. Merci beaucoup. And now, here's my interview with Kelly Camborian. Hello, Kelly. How are you?
Hi, Annie. Fine. And you?
I'm just fine. Very nice to talk to you again.
Well, thank you for having me back on your program.
Thank you. You were on the show talking about Burgundy in episode 57, I think. So it was a while back.
Yes.
Because this one is episode 98, and it was fun to talk to you. You know your stuff. You're very grounded in the local culture of Burgundy, so that's wonderful.
Good. Well, today we are going to talk about a festival that takes place in Burgundy. In French, it's called La Saint-Vincent Tournante. So it's a revolving wine tasting festival.
Oh, revolving.
Yes, which means that it takes place in a different village every year.
Oh, Oh, of course, of course.
Right. So it is in honor of the patron saint of wine and wine growers, Saint Vincent.
Uh-huh.
So let me just tell you what it is, the festival.
Yeah.
The feast day of Saint Vincent is the 22nd of January. He was martyred in 304, and he became the patron saint of wine growers. And so here in Burgundy, every year, usually it's the weekend after the 22nd of January, there is a festival. And as I said, it takes place in a different village every year.
That's cool.
Or sometimes two villages, because some of the villages are small. And so two of them get together, and it is a festival. It's a combination of religious and secular, because there is the parading of the statue of Saint Vincent.
Mm-hmm.
And
isn't it, sorry to interrupt, but isn't it interesting that France, which is one of the most secular countries in the world, has so many religiously inspired traditions? And it doesn't seem to cause any problems. I mean, you know, the people who parade around this saint, around those villages, are probably not super religious most of the year, right?
Probably not. Some of them yes, some of them no. That's right. But as you said, it's a tradition.
Yeah.
And there's even a mass. So they parade the saint through the town. They get to the church, and there's a mass. So as I said, it's...
And you see that even in my village, where we don't have a tradition like this, but when we do celebrations for like Armistice Day,
yes,
there's always a get-together in front of the monument to the fallen soldiers.
Okay.
But there's also, then everybody processes and goes to the mass in their honor. And, and the priest is included in all these things. And it doesn't seem to, you know, rattle anybody's chains. You have statues of saints all over in public spaces in France. You have at crossroads, you have the Virgin Mary or a big old crucifix. Yeah. And it doesn't really, anyway, it's an interesting...
It is interesting. And I think a lot of people hold on to tradition, whether they are religious or not. It's a deep and long tradition here in France, and I think people like to hold on to that, like they like to hold on to their gastronomy or their traditions. So
that's a good point. Because I mean, he was martyred in 304, and yet we still celebrate the guy today.
Yes, that's right.
Anyway.
So, in fact, this is interesting. This statue, there are several statues. There were in the Middle Ages what we call mutual aid societies in the winemaking villages, which means they helped each other. And most of them had their own statue of St. Vincent. But now there's one statue. It's a little bit like the Olympic torch, and it gets paraded through town. It goes to the church. It's on display the whole time during the festival, and then it goes to somebody's house all year.
Oh, wow.
And it stays there until the next year, when it is passed to the next town and someone's house, and it's paraded through. So it goes from house to house and town to town, and it's a very important part of the festivities.
That's great.
And so just a word about the festival itself before we talk about the saint and everything else. This year it's in the Auxerrois. We'll talk about that in Irancy. And usually you arrive at the village, and they do put in place buses to take you, because parking, of course, is limited in these small towns. And you, at the entrance of the village, you buy a kit. And the kit consists of a glass with a glass holder. With the name, of course, of the town and the year on it. So it's also a souvenir. And you get 7 tickets. And you go around, the vineyard owners and the cellar owners open their cellars, and you give your ticket, and you can taste the different kinds of wine in the town, in that area. People who don't have cellars in the town, they bring stands, and you can still taste. And, of course, there's entertainment on the streets, jugglers or whatever it is, and some local products, probably some escargots, some snails, or some gougères that you can taste too and buy on the streets.
Okay. Gougère, what's that?
Oh, gougère, it's a specialty here in Burgundy. It's a little cheese puff pastry that you drink with your aperitif.
Oh, very good.
Yes. So, and there's music and entertainment. So it is truly a festival.
That sounds like fun.
2 days. It's fun. It lasts 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. There can be a lot of people. 40,000 about. I guess a couple of years it went up to 100,000. They tried to limit it now because it's just too much for these little villages.
Yeah.
And most people do go to taste. Some people do go to drink. Just want to put that in there. So, because there are always some people who go just to drink and not to taste.
Yeah. Well, so is there a lot of public drunkenness?
A lot, no, but yes, you see it.
Some, yeah.
Often, yes. Often the young people come, although it's a little expensive Burgundy wine to get drunk on, but it's an excuse to come and drink and party and be in the festivities.
So how generous are they in their 7 servings? Is it just enough to taste, or do they?
Yes, it's just enough to taste. You have a glass, and they just give you enough to taste.
Okay, they're not going to give you
probably
a full glass.
Not a full glass, no.
Right.
And you can buy, of course, and then at the end of the day, probably not the end of the day, probably with 4 or 5 tickets, it is a glass, but you don't drink it all at the same time.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
So the point is not to get you drunk. The point
is not to get drunk, but there is wine for sale, and so people do sometimes buy wine. As I said, it's a little expensive to get drunk on, but some people do. Most people go to taste.
Define a little expensive to get drunk on. Well, how much?
Well, it depends on what you're buying, of course, but Burgundy wines can be expensive. But even if you buy, I think personally, if you buy a 12-euro bottle of wine just to get drunk. Well, I guess that's okay, but 30 euros or more, but they'll be from all price ranges too.
Right. Very good.
Of course. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Saint Vincent himself, because the great question is, how did Saint Vincent become the patron saint of wine growers and wine makers?
Yes, I was reading what you sent me about that. I liked it. It's a great story.
Well, because Saint Vincent, we have to say right away, was born in Huesca in Spain. And he grew up in Spain. He lived in Spain. He became the bishop in Saragossa. He's known for that, being the bishop in Saragossa. He became deacon too, under the Roman Emperor Valerian. And so the question is, he never actually never came to France very much. And he is, I want to say this before I forget, honored in other parts of France too, Champagne, Alsace. So it's not just here in Burgundy. And the theories there are several theories as to why Saint Vincent, they're very colorful stories, so we'll talk about them. Very colorful stories about why he became the patron saint of wine and wine growers. And the first, perhaps most obvious reason is his name. Because in French, it's Vincent. Which means wine and blood.
That's right. Just the sounds.
Just the sounds. And sang. And it could just be because it evokes the idea of the Eucharist, the communion, the wine turning into blood and all of that. It could just be that.
Right.
But some other theories, of course, are the way he was martyred. Like many saints at this time, the early Christian times, he did not want to give up his beliefs in Christ, in Christianity. So, of course, he was martyred. And he was martyred in terrible ways, as most of the saints were, pierced with hot pokers. He was thrown into a cellar, apparently with broken pottery, but he came out unscathed. He didn't die. He foiled them all. And he apparently was thrown into the sea with weights, but again, he didn't die. And it was at that point, they say, that some of his guards were converted to Christianity.
Yeah, because the millstone floated. They tied a stone around him.
That's right. And the millstone, and it floated. And so it caused the guards guarding him to convert to Christianity.
Right, because at the time, these were Romans.
They were Romans.
Right.
That's right.
So they were not yet, Christianity was trying to establish itself in Europe, but it wasn't a given,
That's right. We're in the 4th century, the end of the 3rd and the beginning of the 4th century.
Right.
No, end of the 4th, beginning of the 5th century. 305, I said,
Yeah.
So yes, martyrs, these were most of the martyrs, the saints that we know that were martyred in terrible ways, was at this time because they wouldn't renounce their religion.
Right.
So to continue, they also say that perhaps Saint Vincent was crushed in a wine press or in some kind of press. So he was crushed like the grapes. So he could
not friendly.
He was probably, though, because it was quite more common to crush people, to demember them, meaning to put them between horses and tear their limbs off. Yes, I'm sorry, this isn't very pleasant, but this is just to understand the idea of the importance to the Christians of Saint Vincent.
Yeah.
But the most colorful story is the story of Saint Vincent and his donkey.
Oh, yes, I love that.
Yes. So Saint Vincent was preaching to a group of wine growers along the way with his donkey, because in the stories, saints often have donkeys. Mm-hmm. And as he was preaching, his donkey escaped and nibbled a very large patch of vines. Mm-hmm. And of course, the wine growers were not very happy, and they chased Saint Vincent away. Well, he wasn't saint yet. They chased the deacon away. But the next year, it was that patch of vineyards that grew the best grapes.
Right.
So it was perhaps the beginning of pruning.
That's right.
And I'd like to say that the 22nd of January, around that date, is the time when the grapes are perfect for pruning.
Right. Well, most trees, most living things, that's because when all the leaves have fallen.
That's right.
In France, that's the good time. Actually, I have to go prune my mulberry tree this week.
Yes,
so.
That's right. And the sap has settled. That's right.
Right,
So it's a good time for pruning.
It's a good time because you're not as likely to damage the tree because it's
not
in full force. Anyway, yeah.
That's right. So that could a link with Saint Vincent and wine growers.
And I also like that they mentioned that he's often portrayed with serpette.
Yes.
Which is a pruning
knife.
Yeah, pruning knife, yeah.
Yeah, those are his attributes, because every saint has an attribute.
Right.
Are a bunch of grapes and this pruning knife.
Right. And that's how you recognize them. And it's one of the really fun things to do in French churches is to look around to try and see if you can recognize who it is that you're looking at, what statue this is.
That's right. Like in paintings or in churches, or that's right.
Yeah. It's just a fun exercise, and just to see the different ways the same saint is portrayed. Yet there's always, like Saint Peter always has big keys.
That's right.
Right, and you have Saint Antoine de Padoue.
Yes.
He always has. He's like this monk he usually has a book and a child sitting on the book because he was a teacher.
Right.
Anyway, they all have a.
Yeah, and most people recognize Saint George with his dragon.
Right.
Or Saint Sebastian pierced by arrows. Those are the ones that jump out at you. That's right. That's right.
And Michael, the archangel.
That's right.
Yeah.
Battling the demon. Exactly.
That's right.
So Saint Vincent never came to Burgundy, but some of his relics came to Burgundy. And they say that here in Burgundy, after a few bad harvests, the vines were blessed with the relics of Saint Vincent, and after that there were some good harvests. So it became important here in Burgundy, and there isn't anymore, a cathedral in Mâcon, the southernmost town in Burgundy, to Saint Vincent. It was pretty much dismantled in the during the religious wars by the Protestants. There are some vestiges left. But so Saint Vincent was honored here. In Chalon-sur-Saône too, there's a cathedral to Saint Vincent. So he is an important saint here, even though he was never really connected during his life to D.
That's wonderful.
I just wanted to mention, for a while, he did have a competitor. I find this funny too. He had a competitor called Saint Vernier, or Werner in German, because he was particularly venerated in Alsace and in Auvergne. And the trouble was, their effigies to him, but he was not able to protect the vines in the 19th century from phylloxera. They prayed to him, they invoked him, they did everything they could, but all the vines were damaged by the phylloxera. It's everywhere in France. Yep. And so at the end, when it didn't work, either they burned the effigy or they threw the effigy, the seat, into the Allier, which is the river in Auvergne.
He was a no good saint.
Poor thing, huh? I don't think anybody could do anything about Phylloxera, so he was
No.
demoted, and he's no longer the patron saint of wine growers.
It makes sense to me. You didn't
Yes.
work out.
No,
Out.
it didn't work out. It didn't work out. So now let's talk a little bit about why the origin of the St. Vincent. How did it come about?
Mm-hmm.
And it happened, in fact, in 1938. So it was created in 1938 by what we call la Confrérie des Chevaliers de Tastevin. And it is a brotherhood of, well, it's literally translated, the Brotherhood of Knights of Wine Tasters and Wine Growers.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're actually in 1934 first when they were created. In 1934, we're in the Depression, and there were good harvests and good wines, but nobody, of course, was buying them.
That's right.
That's right. There was a little bit of a problem.
Bad times.
It was bad times. So a few wine growers got together in Nuit Saint-Georges, one of the wine growing towns, and they said, we need to do something about this problem. Mm-hmm. And they said, okay, we can't get our wine to everybody to taste it so they know it's good. So let's bring the people to our wine.
Mm.
So they created a very large dinner with a wine tasting.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time was November 16th, 1934. And people came and tasted the wine. And this was truly the birth of the Confrérie des Chevaliers de Tastevin. And their mission then, and their mission today, because they still exist, was to and is to promote and sell Burgundy wine as best they can.
Right.
So this was quite a success, and they created this confrérie, this brotherhood, and they had meetings every year, and it grew, and the wine became more and more well-known, and they were given, at one point, they were lent the Chateau de Clos de Vougeot. People know the name, perhaps, the great. It's not really a chateau. I think we talked about that. It was a Cistercian wine growing installation. And they were given that. They were lent that for their meetings. And finally, in the 50s, because they had several of their meetings there, the state, because it's a historical monument, the state sold it to the Confrérie des Chevaliers de Tastevin for the symbolic franc, and now they are the ones who have to keep up the maintenance of the chateau. And it is there every year. They have their meetings, their chapter meetings. There are several a year, but there's always one, the opening one of the year, that happens before the Saint Vincent Tournante. And so it's sort of the opening of the wine season, if you will.
And these confréries are usually quite spectacular. I don't know what it's like, but they have robes and they have all sorts of symbolism, and it's usually very impressive looking.
Yes, they have red robes, and they all wear their tastevin. Now, a tastevin is a little wine tasting cup that you see when sommelier, so in the restaurants wear. People don't really taste wine in it anymore. Right. Now, there are two kinds of tastevin. There are kinds with the lines, this is what are called striations. It's kind of ribs inside, and that's for tasting the white wine in your dark cellar. And the others with the bumps and hollows called couplets, which is for tasting the red wine. The idea being that when you swirl the wine in your dark cellar, you can see the colors better of the white wine with the striations and of the red wine with the bumps and hollows. So if you have a chance to examine a tastevin, a little wine tasting cup closely, perhaps you'll see the bumps, hollows, or the striations. Now, some have both. So the members are given a silver tastevin on a red and yellow ribbon. That is the symbol of the Confrérie de Chevaliers de Tastevin. And so, yes, they have great robes and hats, and they have several chapter meetings every year, and they are very big dinners. Could be up to 600 people,
Wow.
Great and evening gowns and all of that. I've never been. I did work at the Chateau de Claude Rougeau, and but I've never been to a chapter meeting dinner. Maybe someday.
Yeah, sure.
Someday, why not? Yes,
Sure.
you never know.
Do they admit women as members?
Yes,
of the
there are
festival?
women. Yes, there are women members. Yes, and a lot of famous people are members, and there are different chapters all over the world. So it's an international organization. You do not need to be a wine taster or a wine grower. You need to be somewhat of a amateur wine lover, but you don't need to be an expert. And there are chapters all over. We had visitors from Mexico, from Brazil, so all over the world. And then, of course, here in France, most of the Grand Masters are French. They come from the local villages, but not necessarily. So yes, you just need a sponsor, and then you are intronized into the confrérie.
Very good.
And of course, they invoke Saint Vincent at that time, but not only, because there are other patrons of the confrérie, like Bacchus, of course, god of wine, and Noah.
Noah.
Yes, maybe you're surprised, but
Yes, I am surprised.
yes, well, another good story. Noah is invoked because Noah is truly considered the father of wine growing. Because if you remember, or if you know, from the New Testament, after the flood, the waters receded, the ark landed supposedly on Mount Ararat in Turkey, in Armenia.
Yes.
And the first thing that Noah did when he got off was plant grapes, vines.
Ah, wise man.
Yes. And the second thing he did was get drunk.
Ah. Well, that happened fast.
Yes, very fast. And his sons were ashamed. So there's a big story in Genesis about Noah. And so he is one of the patrons of the Confrérie de Chevaliers de Tastevin with Bacchus and Saint Vincent.
Oh, very nice. So how can visitors enjoy all of that? First of all, are there many foreign visitors that come for these occasions?
Many no, because it is in the middle of winter, but there are. People do come. I would say if they're foreign, most of them are European because they do come in bus loads. And they get a hotel, and then there are buses, as I said, often from different villages to take people to the town to enjoy this. So if you're a wine lover, people do come when they are wine lovers. But it is in the middle of the winter. It's cold.
Right.
Although
Burgundy
this year it's not too cold. Yes,
Yeah.
It's kind of rainy this winter.
Yeah.
So it's possible. It's a little bit late now, but I'm sure you could find a hotel, but not too close to the area. But as I said, there are often buses going from major towns to for the day.
Right.
So it's possible for people to find that. There's a site of the Saint-Vincent Tournante. You can have a look at the site and see what arrangements there are.
Yeah. Does it attract a lot of wine distributors and buyers and all of that?
Yes. Also négociants to see if they can import, export, whatever it is. Yes. But a lot of people just go as a winter outing. Individuals go and they buy their tickets and they just have a little. It's a weekend outing that can be very pleasant.
Yeah. And it's always good to try the wine, especially, this is something French people do all the time. They will stop at a chateau somewhere, try it, and buy a case or two or three. And then in the following years, I have plenty of friends who do this. They just order 2 cases from this place, 3 cases from that place, and they have wine cellars, and they just put them in the wine cellars, and
that's right.
That's how most French people do it.
That's right. And then they taste, they know what they like, what they don't like.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So as I said, this year it's in Irancy. Irancy. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I have not.
No. It's not surprising, but it is in the Auxerrois, which is near the town of Auxerre. And if you know your wine, it's near the Chablis region. So it's in the north of Burgundy, in the department of the Yonne.
Yes.
Yes. So it's not too far from Chablis, but it's not really considered Chablis. It is northern wine, which means that the color will be a little lighter than the wines down here near the Côte de Beaune and the Côte de Nuit, the best known Burgundy wines. And it hasn't been in the Auxerrois since 1999.
Oh, wow.
So, and only once before that in 1975. So they're very pleased in Irancy to present their wines from the north to the world, may also to the rest of Burgundy.
Sure,
And
sure.
I don't know if I said it takes place on the 30th and the 31st of January. No, I didn't. I just said it took place after the 22nd of January.
Right, right. Right.
And it's 72nd edition of the Saint-Vincent Tournante.
It's
So, yes,
it's
yeah.
very French kind of celebration. Very, this is the type of thing that French people do. And it has been, I know that there are wine groups around where I live, Fronton notably, where
Yes.
they would very much like to have that sort of traditional celebration because it's a very good, it's good PR and it's also good fun.
It's fun, and it's a way to get out even in the winter.
Yes, 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 because,
And
yeah.
they do highlight certain cultural heritage sites, so if you do want to visit, so they make it available. So it is a good way in the middle of winter to sort of cheer up and have good ambiance
Yeah.
in town. Yeah, it's a good change.
That's great. That's great. So not too many visitors, but the diehards always find a way.
Well, there are not too many. I don't know about this year because it is in the north, but as I said, there are sometimes 40,000 visitors.
Oh, yeah. So surely it can't just be local villagers
No,
attending. Yeah.
not just local. That's what I mean. I think if foreigners do come, they come by busloads.
Yeah.
From Germany, from Belgium, and they come and they taste and they buy or they don't buy, and it's just a weekend outing. So people do come. That's right. They might not come the whole weekend. They might come just one day or another day. But people do come. It's very well known. And as I said, it's not only here, but it's probably the best well known and the most marketed. So people do know about it.
I just love the image of the donkey grazing on
Yes.
on the grapevines and making them better, because of course back then they probably didn't realize that that pruning is actually very good for the grapes.
Well, they didn't usually trellis like that either. Often they were arbored or they were trellised, but not in exactly the same way. So little by little, it was here, as we talked about before, here in Burgundy, it was the monks who realized pruning was good, the way to trellising, when to trellis, when to prune, when to pick. So over the years, they have discovered that. But probably in the 4th century, no, they didn't know that yet. They grew the way the Romans grew. To plant a new vine, they just bent the vine over and planted the tip in the ground, and then another sprout came. And so, yes.
But it's believable that it would have happened that way.
Sure, of course.
Yes.
Things happen by accident, of course.
Right.
You discover things.
Some of the accidents that local stories like to tell, I'm like, no, that never happened. But this one, it's possible.
It is possible. Absolutely, it's possible.
Like the story of Roquefort with the guy who he saw this beautiful woman and went after her in the hills, and he just happened to put away his lunch in an alcove, and then when he came back weeks later, because of course it took weeks to court this young lady,
yes,
it had turned into Roquefort. I'm like,
that's right.
Nah, that didn't happen. I don't buy that one. But the donkey grazing and making the grapes better the next year, yeah, I'll buy that one.
It's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible. That's right.
Oh, wonderful story.
Before I leave you,
Yes.
I just wanted to talk about some other wine festivities in Burgundy, because there are others. Just to know, this isn't the only one. And especially in November, we have what we call les Trois Glorieuses.
Ah.
Yes.
And you don't mean the revolution.
It's not, no, not the revolution, no. No. These are festivals, 3 wine festivals that happen in November the 1st. They're celebrated, yes. The first is the big chapter meeting at the Château de Claude Vougeot, very big meeting, probably the most important one, by the Confrérie de Chevaliers du Tastevin. And then the second one is the sale of the wine at the Hospice de Beaune. So it's a wine auction at the Hospice de Beaune.
Yes, we must talk about that one, because that one's famous. I mean, everybody, I've heard about this.
Yes, that's right. It's famous because it's one of, I don't want to dare say it's the largest, but it's definitely one of the largest charity auctions in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It happens on the third Sunday in November.
Yeah.
And because the Hospice de Beaune includes the Hôtel Dieu, so the 15th century hospital in Beaune, and the other hospitals that are associated with it around the area of Beaune to create Les Hospices de Beaune. Mm-hmm. And they are the largest vineyard owners in the Côte de Beaune. Mm-hmm. And so every year they have an oenologue, a wine grower, a wine seller, a wine creator, and they create their wine in the cellars under the Hôtel Dieu, so this 15th century hospital. And at the auction, it's Christie's who runs the auction. At this auction, they auction their wine. Wow. They auction barrels, not bottles. So you have to know that. If
right.
you bid on a barrel. You don't usually take the barrel with you unless you're a négociant or a winemaker and you have a place to bottle it after.
Yeah.
But if you're an individual, you can bid on a barrel or part of a barrel and they will bottle it for you. Mm-hmm. And it raises about 5 or 6 million euros.
Wow.
So it is an important auction, yes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And they're very famous. I mean, there's celebrities that go every year.
Yes, because they have, as I said, they have very fine wines, a mixture of village, premier cru, and grand cru wines. So yes,
some of everything.
Some of everything, and it sort of sets the prices for the coming year, how the wine will sell. Mm-hmm. So it's important in many ways, and it's very prestigious. Yeah. And finally, the third Glorieuse is the Monday following the auction. We have La Polée in Meursault. La Polée, the town of Meursault, of course, is famous for its white wines, its good mineral white wines, and it is a big dinner between wine growers. There are about 730 people who come, and the wine growers come and they bring their bottles and they have each other taste their wine, and it's a very fun festival, but mostly for the wine growers and the wine sellers. Okay. Not just anyone gets invited. But this is another festival. The Trois Glorieuses, around wine here in Burgundy too. I'm sure there are others in other villages, but these are the most prestigious and the most well-known.
Yeah, Burgundy has fabulous traditions when it comes to wine. They really go all out.
Yes, because Burgundy is associated with wine, among other things too, but most people who know Burgundy think wine first.
Right. Are there big industries like that in Burgundy? I can't think of any others that are... I mean, like Toulouse, we're not so well known for wines, but we have Airbus, right?
Right. No, Burgundy doesn't have any one big industry. It's very agricultural still. A lot of the economics comes through agriculture. And we have several little industries, but no one major industry. Yes, like Airbus, or in Montbéliard you have the cars, or there's nothing like that. We are known a little bit for people who in the area for metal, because we have Metal Valley with a lot of, in the north of the Côte d'Or, with a lot of the companies who make metal tubings. And already in antiquity, the Gauls were mining the mineral ore to make metal at the time. But it's not an enormous industry either. We can't say that Burgundy is known for that.
Right. Oh, but Burgundy is definitely one of these areas of France that doesn't attract that many visitors. I mean, it's nothing compared to Paris, for example.
No.
But it's very genuine France.
Provence. Yes, it is, but it's changing. We have more and more visitors. And the Climat of Burgundy were named a cultural heritage site by UNESCO.
Right.
It's at the Climat. So I think it will bring more visitors.
But what do you do as a visit, like around the climate of Burgundy? I saw that, but I don't really understand how that helps.
Well, I don't think it helps for it to get known. But you can't in any case, when you talk about Burgundy wine, you have to talk about the Climat. You can't separate it.
That is true.
So, you can't go and look at a Climat. It's something you have to experience drinking the wine.
Yeah.
I talk about it. I can talk about the difference between, for example, Volnay and Pommard, which are side by side and very different wines, or Gevrey-Chambertin, Chambol-Musigny, which are very side by side and very different characters and flavors. So it's not going to bring visitors to look. it's going to bring visitors to taste and to understand.
Very good. Yeah.
So,
which is also very important.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, no, that's right. So, and of course, most people like to come and taste, and they like to a little bit of history too. So it's a good way to combine history and wine tasting. Yes.
Very good.
Right.
Very good. Mm-hmm. So, are you still giving tours? I want to know because
I'm still giving tours.
Very good. And
yes, still tours. Yes, wine tours or other tours, historical tours, or both together. That's what I like best, is to combine the two.
Mm-hmm. Tell people how they can get a hold of you and find you and hire you.
Well, I just have my email address. I don't have a website, but they can get in touch with me and we can work out a visit.
Very good.
After the podcast last year, a family called me and we planned a day visit together, both wine and history, so it was perfect for both of us.
Excellent.
So that's the best way. I like, when I have private tours, to adapt it to the people. I can propose things, of course, but I don't have anything ready-made.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it just depends on what the person wants. Because there's so many things you could do. I mean, it's just the sky's the limit, and you want to help these people make the best out of their day.
Yes, and go to what they like.
Sure.
If they don't like the Middle Ages, we'll visit something else. But so if they like churches, well, there are plenty of those in Burgundy. So yes, just adapt it to what people want.
That's great. So I'll put a link. I mean, I'll put your email address on the show notes so that people can find you easily. And if you want to, if you're just listening and you might forget how to find us, it's joinusinfrance.com/98, the number 98. And it'll take you straight to the show notes and some photos and more, information on how to get a hold of Kelly.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really enjoy talking to you every time. It's fun. You bring it to life. It's wonderful.
Good. I'm glad. Well, thank you again for inviting me. Okay. And perhaps we'll have another collaboration next year.
Absolutely. And please, go and are you going to attend this year? Are you going to go to the festival?
This year I can't go.
Yes,
I have something else that weekend. I have another tasting elsewhere that weekend.
Well, it's okay.
It's okay. As long as I keep tasting and know the wine, it's okay.
Wonderful. All right. Okay. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
This is the French tip of the week.
So you've seen a sign along a road that indicates that they are offering wine tasting and a wine shop. So you stop by, and what do you say? Well, first of all, don't worry about it too much because most of these places hire people that at least have some basic English. So you're probably not going to be all alone, unless it's really the wine producer who is manning the shop. In that case, who knows? But here's what you could say. Bonjour, nous ne parlons pas bien le français, mais nous aimerions découvrir vos vins. Bonjour, nous ne parlons pas bien le français, mais nous aimerions découvrir vos vins. So, hello, we don't speak very good French, but we would love to discover your wines. You say that, for sure you'll be friends forever. And they are going to want to sell you some wine.
If Join Us in France makes your life happier and your trip planning easier, let us know by joining the mailing list, subscribing to the podcast, reviewing the show on iTunes, sharing status updates on Facebook, or sending in a donation. Merci beaucoup!